And Nigel Farage could have come and asked these questions that he claims to have. And instead, he made a video say, I don't know, but is there something we're not being told? He could have come to Parliament. He was elected by the good people of Clacton. He could have come and asked directly those questions. Nigel Farage is going to grift. There is a broader disenchantment.
Yes.
That is far, far, far more important. When people think that questions aren't being answered, actually, people like me have got to go out and say, of course, there is things that cannot be said in the public domain about multiple murders that are going through trial. When people like Tommy Robinson go out and talk about these cases, they make it less likely people will be convicted.
Yeah.
Justice is complicated. Keeping people safe isn't just saying the hardest thing, it is a complex fabric. For too long, politics became about what people tweeted. And leadership was about 3-word slogans rather than explaining that things are really difficult and complicated. Presenting the moon on a stick, world beating, everything has to be in hyperbolic terms, leads exactly to the ideas that allow grifters to send a load of thugs onto the street of Southport. If you want immediate answers to problems, you're going to get shit.
Jess Phillips, welcome to PoliticsJOE. How are you?
I'm all right. The sun is shining. It's too hot in London. But I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah, and there's no annoying pneumatic drilling happening in the immediate vicinity, so that's really calm and peaceful as well.
I mean, it's not like something drilling into your brain slowly but surely, but we're gonna overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. A stark contrast, this uncomfortable situation, with reading your fantastic book, Jess.
Thanks.
You see what I did there?
What a great segue.
I know. Consummate professional.
Talking of the word segue, I read that as Sieg. I'm going to say until about last year.
Segue, I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the word segue. I just never associated it with that word.
Yeah. And then, you know, the ride-along ones.
Yeah, that spells differently though, isn't it? Which is just confused us all.
Yeah, it has, yeah. So it's a conversation between two intellectual titans for the next half an hour. Jess, we're talking about your book, let's be honest. Truth, Lies and Politics. Tell us about it, what's it about? And I'm conscious as well that it's kind of found itself in between two stints on the Labour front bench as well. So you've been quite busy. It
is. So yeah, I wrote the book after I had resigned from the Labour front bench before the election. Remember those heady days when we were all expecting the election to be in autumn, and that was very much my expectation as well. I mean, I didn't go so far as to put a bet on it, but I did expect it to be in autumn. And so, the point of the book stands up regardless of when it was written, and it is about how I feel and have experienced the degradation of politics, the lack of trust in politics, and the damage that does to ordinary people. So there are a million column inches and almost certainly a million interviews with me about the kind of violence and aggression that I have suffered because people dislike politicians. That is a subject in and of itself, but actually it's what it does to ordinary people, and how if you don't trust the thing that governs everything in your life, it doesn't make it better, it makes it worse. And we live in an environment of frothy hate and distrusting the people who decide on where our kids get to school and what kind of bus you can get on, has not served the people well. And I feel like there is a need for both politics to shift the way it does things in order to change that, but also the people have a responsibility. The point of the book is for readers to be able to do something about that as well.
Yes. So many examples of this. You mentioned the election, right? And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, over the course of this. But even just in the last 24 hours, if we're talking about sort of crowds of people distrusting institutions, distrusting information, distrusting the media, distrusting largely every sort of figure of authority or institution in their lives, sometimes aided and abetted by certain characters.
Yep.
If we look at the scenes in Southport last night, I mean, just your analysis of that, and do you think the themes that you talk about in this book apply in the way that I've just applied them, or am I sort of going
No, it absolutely does apply. But when there is an absence of trust and leadership that people can get behind, and bear in mind the vast majority of people in our country do respect the police's actions in Southport over the horrific murders. They do respect the fact that the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister turned up immediately to be with that community. However, when there is a vacuum that gets created because people believe that everybody in authority, including the police, including politicians, including everybody, lies to us and is keeping something from us, this unknown something. And in fact, Nigel Farage took to the airways to not name anything that was being kept from us, but to make out like something was being kept from us. Then there is always grifters who'll fill that gap. So you have to go out and be honest and tell the truth about why things are difficult. The absolute truth of almost all incidences of either violence or the sort of calamities that happen is complicated reasons that lead up to those things, instead of something that can be summed up in a tweet.
Yes.
That is the trouble. And I think that for too long, politics became about what people tweeted. And leadership was about 3-word slogans rather than explaining that things are really difficult and complicated, and that no policy that you ever come up with won't hurt. And sometimes, in the worst cases, kill some people. Like that, nobody, presenting the moon on a stick, world beating, everything has to be in hyperbolic terms, leads exactly to the ideas that allow grifters to send a load of thugs onto the street of Southport when people are grieving and needed love and a complex understanding and an approach that will help them, help their community, that will hope to seek to stop these sorts of things happening in the future. Absolutely look at what might have gone wrong in these cases. Those 4 things, even those 4 things, is more complicated than they're killing our children. Rush to the streets.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And actually, I think you mentioned Twitter. The tone of the conversation on there, and actually the content that's being published and distributed on there now, there is a marked change in it, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Since Elon Musk has bought it.
Elon Musk has. I'm not here to defend it before. It wasn't always cracking.
It was brilliant.
Absolutely.
The public town square.
Yeah, public town square. Everybody was being absolutely delightful. No one was being racist or sexist or anything on Twitter before. However, before there was actually some sort of standard that people could alter. Like I had been involved on a number of occasions working with people at Twitter to alter the way that people experience pylons, for example, when thousands of people start messaging you. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't what it is today. And what it is today is genuinely pushing algorithms of misinformation is the way. And if I say anything on, it could be literally like, had poached eggs for breakfast. There are, whether it's bot farms or organised, it is an organised system that will immediately be like, what about migrants? And it's like, or what about Israel? Or what about, and it's just, it is set up to hate, whereas it used to, and I love Twitter. I very rarely use it now, and I used to be addicted to it. So Elon Musk has definitely, he's basically done a 12-step program for me in a very short space of time. I didn't actually have to do any of that bit where I went and apologised to everybody. Made amends.
All it took was a billionaire to spend 44 billion quid on the thing and destroy the content moderation.
An absolute lunatic to destroy the moderation, and my addiction is gone.
Yeah. So happy for you.
Yeah, but I mean, what I really loved about it, and not many politicians do use it like this, is that there was a genuine back and forth. Our democracy in Britain is the greatest democracy in the world. And I'm not saying that because I want to be like world beating.
Yeah.
To me, it is the most gold standard. The only other country in the world that has anywhere close to it is Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, where, like, I mean, you can come and tell me if the leaves are... You can come into my office and be like, there are leaves falling off the trees on my drive. Yeah. And I don't want to say, well, you know, I don't control autumn, but the Prime Minister will probably this weekend sit in a church hall.
Do you think he's still doing his surgeries?
Oh, yeah, I mean, undoubtedly. Theresa May did it all the way through.
See, I find this really interesting because I think about the American system, right? And I cannot imagine a world in which Barack Obama is sat in the village hall hearing about, like, someone's dry stone wall, being like, you know, this, right, well, we'll get that sorted out for you. Do you know what I mean? And
I suppose the example of Barack Obama isn't a great... Because the king's not doing that as well, I suppose. So the president is the head of state of a country. But you're right, the senators, that I don't imagine there's, like, AOC is, like, you know, on a Friday afternoon sitting and somebody being like... The drive's, you know, my drop curb, it's taken 7 months for the council to
still
come
a
up with it.
disabled parking bay outside my house, council won't paint over it.
Yeah, exactly, like that. And it's easy to laugh at, and in fact, famously, I think, when Hillary Clinton was when she was the counterpart of William Hague when he was the Foreign Secretary, they used to be like, sort of, G7s be like, Philip, tell us about that stuff you have to do, like taking the mick out of it.
Yeah.
But like that is, honestly, we lose that. And actually the security environment has already degraded some of that in our democracy.
Yeah.
So these sort of thuggish anti-establishment are literally taking the tarnish off what is an amazing thing about our democracy. And for me, Twitter for ages was part of that. I could have a conversation with people who aren't my constituents, because we have quite sort of strict rules about speaking to our constituents. People could get in touch with me, and it wasn't always, you know, like that they agreed with me, that they were like, well, what about this? And I would try, where I saw it, to enter into the town square debate. Absolutely not a chance now.
Yeah, and actually there's, you know, if you're an MP who can be bothered to attend Parliament and, for example, ask an urgent question or contribute to a statement, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So in particular, if we're still talking in the context of what's just happened,
in Southport,
Mr Farage could have attended, right, in Parliament yesterday.
Yesterday we had a statement to the House. I have to say it was Parliament at its absolute finest. Lots of tears shed, watching grown men and grown women crying in the chamber of the House of Commons yesterday, and people trying, and what those politicians who were standing up, whether it was Yvette Cooper or James Cleverly or lovely Jim from the DUP, I can't tell you how, whilst we may never agree, there is nobody in Parliament who is more beloved than Jim from the DUP. Everybody who stood up was trying to push the point that the police have a difficult job to do. We were trying to see off some of what transpired, and everybody did that. And Nigel Farage could have come and asked these questions that he claims to have. There is that, and it's in a public forum. The public would be able to see both him asking and the answers to those questions. And instead, he made a video say, I don't know, but is there something we're not being told? Like, it's...
But do you know what, though?
He could have come to Parliament. He was elected by the good people of Clacton. He could have come and asked directly those questions. And I know what it is to be an opposition MP. I really only know what it is to be an opposition MP.
It's quite a novel experience.
Yes, it's absolutely novel. I keep slagging off the government. It's really, really hard.
You get an email being like, Jess, you have to stop doing this.
Stop slagging off the government. Oh God, it's not the government anymore. But that's really interesting about him, right? Because somewhat peculiar, we've had quite a lot of civil unrest in recent weeks. When it's happening in Leeds, it's politics of the subcontinent, right? Yeah.
And then when this happens in Southport, it's, well, what aren't we being told? Which I won't go as far as to call that incitement, but it's certainly a provocative way of talking about a tragedy before we know a great deal of information.
The man isn't stupid, he knew what he was doing.
And there is a real disconnect between the way he's talking about those two events, right?
But of course, Nigel Farage is going to grift. Do you know what I mean? Like, if anyone was expecting any different, nobody was expecting any different. You weren't expecting any different. I wasn't expecting any different. And there is a broader issue of the disenchantment. Nigel Farage is just, it's a jester. There is a broader disenchantment.
Yes.
That is far, far, far more important. And where people are finding their information and how that information is regulated is far more interesting to me. And the complexities that have led to that disenfranchisement and how it manifests, whether it's through racism or violence or whatever it is, and how we can do something about that. That's the thing that's interesting to me, and the thing that I will then go on to focus on. But that doesn't happen. When people think that questions aren't being answered, actually, people like me have got to go out and say, of course, there is things that cannot be said in the public domain about multiple murders that are going through trial. And the reason we cannot say it is not because we're hiding anything. It is because there is a risk to both the families of the girls, Southport, there's so many ports, Southport itself, the family of, the families and the neighbourhood surrounding where the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator comes from, the police. Also, when people like Tommy Robinson go out and talk about these cases, they make it less likely people will be convicted.
Yeah.
Justice is complicated. Keeping people safe isn't just saying the hardest thing, it is a complex fabric. And when you're not hearing things you think are happening, half of them won't be happening, and believe you me, I've seen behind the curtain. Cock up is much more likely than conspiracy. The idea that we could fake the moon landing, we can't get a drop curve put in. Honestly, I absolutely love any conspiracy theory. I'm like that. Really, these guys? Have you met them?
And you believe they'd be able to lie about it?
I am just like, this is. You have wildly overestimated the ability of these people. But also, it's because they're trying to find solutions and knee-jerk solutions. When Sarah Everard was killed on the streets in London, the kind of politics that we have just all lived through meant that the Metropolitan Police and the government thought, oh God, something's happened. Quickly, pull the handbrake, and came out and announced. I mean, the two of the things that got announced was, if you're worried on the street, flag down a bus. It's just like, okay, so now we just got women who are being like attacked on the street, just wildly flailing for a bus, whether they're on a bus route or not. What a cracking idea. And the government floated the idea of putting undercover police officers in bars. The man who killed Sarah Everard was a police officer not in uniform. That is what you get. If you want immediate answers to problems, you're going to get shit. That isn't thought through, that doesn't think about the broader consequences, that doesn't think about the long-term effect. Like, that's what if you want reactionary politics that can go and immediately say, well, the answers to this are this is where this person was from, and this is that, like, then what you're going to get is more murders, not fewer.
Yeah. And I wonder how much this is like a recent phenomenon, right? Because when we look at, let's say the election, most recent example, inflammatory campaign. I mean, I've got, you described the most recent campaign as gruesome and one of the worst election campaigns I've ever stood in.
Yeah.
And I think everyone watching will be familiar with the scenes at the count that you were subjected to. And I'm quite keen to impress that this issue of kind of increased tension. I mean, maybe you could call it sectarianism, but basically sort of the looking for simple solutions to complex problems.
It's just grievance politics.
Whether it's the far right talking about this most recent thing, whether it's in relation to what's happening in Israel and Gaza, whatever it is, whether that's something that's happened relatively recently, whether you've noticed this happening over a period of time and it's sort of intensified.
Yeah. So one of the sort of what I try to do in the book is take you through the things that had to be done to end us at this point. You don't get what happened to me in my constituency without first degrading a neighbourhood to the point at which it feels like everybody has forgotten it, and they're not wrong. That's a perfectly reasonable assessment of parts of, in fact, all of the constituency that I represent. There is no social infrastructure left. That exists is run by ironically, most of it is run by a woman who had her tyres slashed on the day of the election. There is no council buildings left. There is no neighbourhood office. There is the community centres are boarded up 6 days out of 7. You have to degrade people's expectations and in order to end up with the politics that ends up with just grievance. So whether you're Workers' Party or you're, the Reform, at both ends of the spectrum, neither one of them is presenting any solution. They're only presenting grievance. So it's very easy. I could sit all day and talk to you about the things that I'm aggrieved at. I mean, first against the wall when the revolution comes is people who send me LinkedIn invitations, people who listen to their people who think that I want to listen to their mobile phones on public transport. I mean, I'm getting to gulag levels here. Really? This is how I feel. Have I ever tapped anyone on the shoulder? I'm like a vigilante on the train. I'm like that. Nobody wants to listen to this. I absolutely loathe and detest it.
Yeah.
It's very any 2-bit person can sit and come up with the things that they're aggrieved about, coming up with what the solution is. But grievance politics only works. This sort of whether you call it sectarianism or, and I wouldn't refer to what happened where I live as that. I would say it is a group of disillusioned people unhappy with the political establishment for all reasons, and a match got lit.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't either. I was a little bit. After the local election results, I think there were a couple of Greens who won in that, and they were sort of chanting like Allahu Akbar after they won. Fine. And similar during the general election, there was like a bit of, again, chanting. And that's why I sort of said hesitantly, I don't know whether I would call it that, because it basically looked to me that people were seeing like Muslims winning and celebrating and being like, we've got sectarian politics.
Yeah, no, I represent a large Muslim population. Some of my family are Muslim. My children go to schools where the majority of children are Muslim. It's not featuring in any of that. Yeah. It is like, and actually what happened to me at the count, what I felt really awful about, and actually, funnily enough, when I faced far right aggression and misogyny, that's not true actually, quite a lot of men do get in touch with me and say, I am sorry on behalf of mankind. I'm like, you don't have to do that. But the amount of Muslim people from my constituency and across the country who wrote to me and said, I just want you to know this is, and I was like, you have no responsibility. These people didn't do this because they were Muslim. They did it because they were twats. And if you want to seek power on the back of grievance alone, you have no right to gain it, in my view. Grievance without a desire, and not just a desire, an idea, a plan, a thought about what needs to be made better and how to make it better. So even when people come to me and they're like, I don't like something completely legitimate, homelessness. Fair enough, yeah, I don't like homelessness either. I don't like homelessness. What are you going to do about it? It's like, yeah, I don't like it either. What are we going to do about it? This idea that if you elect people, you will immediately eliminate your responsibility to take part in something, to do something. Nothing I've ever changed was changed by me. It was changed. I just was the person who stood up and said the weird fancy words, and now we write it into legislation, which honestly, I mean, you could have a law that said stop rape that would be 17 pages long, and what it would say. 2 words would do. I mean, honestly, I have no idea what. The clerks of the House of Commons deserve some. It's literally like Hogwarts. They're speaking in a language no one understands. But like, everything was done by masses of people working together to care about something. Trouble is too often people in my job take the credit and go, I changed the law, I did this, and you get a lot of accolade, and that's nice. I'm not criticising that necessarily. But the truth is that I didn't, and people believe they can't change anything. And so grievance is the obvious solution. If you feel like you can't change anything, you can just be cross about it. We need to be much more honest about how things change, who takes part in it, and how functionally that happens. So I've changed, even from opposition, 20 laws. Not one of them. It might be my name that goes onto the amendment because I'm the elected representative of the people. So one example is that we made it a statutory duty for all council areas to, by law, have to provide refuge accommodation for victims of domestic abuse. So before it was a bit of a postcode lottery, actually, it wasn't a postcode lottery. If you had a Labour council, you were more likely to have. And famously, when Theresa May was the Prime Minister, there were none funded by her constituency council. They were shipping them to the nearest Labour one in Slough. So I campaigned for, long before I was in Parliament, for it to be a legal duty on councils to provide refuge accommodation, there's a legal duty on councils to provide bins. Bins and adult and children's social care. So I just wanted women to matter as much as bins, which in politics...
It's a big ask, Jess.
To be honest, I'll never achieve it. It's a bigger ask. It seems like a joke. The idea that in politics bins isn't the most important thing is somebody who's never been an elected representative of the people. So in the end, it was me that took the call from the minister who said, Jess, we're going to put it into law. We're going to make this a law. But before that was thousands and thousands of activists, people who'd suffered domestic abuse and not been able to get a refuge, writing, getting in touch with different groups. It was a campaign run by the Sun newspaper called Give Me Shelter, which put tents outside the front of Parliament. It was the women who worked with the different media agencies to make it so that this became a mainstream thing. And that was years of work and effort. My name goes on the amendment. It wasn't me who did that. I was just one of the people. And we don't say that. We stand in front of buildings and we pretend that we built them. We didn't build them. When politicians cosplay, we put on a hard hat, my husband, who works on site, says, you know that nobody wears any of that stuff until a politician is coming.
There's a camera there.
Yeah, there's a camera there.
It's quite a disarming idea, though, isn't it, to say, nothing is born of grievance, because...
Well, no, nothing is born of grievance. We grievance alone.
Yeah. Because let's take, I don't know, some kind of mass, like the Iraq War, for example. Of the 1 million people that go and march, how many of them had an idea of how to resolve the situation that was happening there? Not that many of them, right?
I was one of them. I don't know that I had a particularly well thought out idea. My mum was like, Get on the couch.
So, those people were angry. I don't think they had a particular grasp. Some of them probably almost certainly did, particularly like sharp grasp of foreign policy, of the history of Iraq, of, the neocons in America, take your pick, and how to solve it. Surely there is a place for...
that's. I wouldn't describe that as grievance. I would describe that as activism.
Right.
It can be based on something you're against, but you can't just be against something. You have to also be for something. And I mean, in that situation, that you didn't need to have a particular grasp to feel like you wanted just honesty, in fact, from the government. Like you felt as if there needed to be something explained to you about why this was the right solution. And that, at the moment, and ordinary people feeling grievance is absolutely fine. And no wonder they find these places to put it. It is then on those people who are leading, whether it's standing for whichever political party, including my own sometimes, it is on them to not just act with grievance, to come up with solutions and to bring those people along to create a solution, not to smash up a town. Like, actually, all those people who felt aggrieved and got on a train, they weren't from Southport. All those people, I mean, some of them definitely just were out to just have a violent ruck. I mean, personally, on any sort of vigil or protest that I've taken, I don't take a crate of cider with me, as a rule.
Very little cocaine at the Sarah Everard vigil.
Very, very little cocaine at the Sarah Everard vigil. Quite the why on earth wouldn't you have taken to the airwaves if you cared about the subject and try and activate some of the people who maybe just went along? Same with Trump in America. Like you've got your hardcore who are just going for a ruck, and then there are people with genuine grievance who get carried up with these things. Why wouldn't you try and direct that action? It reminds me of actually being in Labour. I remember screaming, like howling. I had a £10 10-ounce baby. My husband says that my saying that I have a £10 10-ounce baby is like my dad's a toolmaker. He says, you say it every 5
You want
seconds.
everyone
I want everyone to know that I had a £10 10-ounce baby.
Much pain relief?
No, did it without anything, no, because it just came out too quick. I'd have had all the drugs. I don't wish to be one of those, I did it without drugs, because I just wasn't enough the time. I was screaming for the drugs.
It's too late.
Yeah, they were just like, the baby's coming out. Yeah, sorry. But what she said to me, she said, in every breath that you are taking to scream, you are using energy that could be used to push your baby out.
I'm sorry, that must be the most fucking frustrating thing in the world. What you're doing right now, Jess, isn't actually that helpful.
It was frustrating, you're absolutely right. However, there is some truth in it, isn't there?
No doubt.
There is some truth that the energy you put into howling in pain can definitely be directed to something productive.
Yes.
And in this instance, produce something very large and that has changed my life forever, and also my body. I'm more pleased about the former than the latter. But that it's like, and one of the things I'm trying to get across to the reader in the book is that howl by all means. And sometimes I want to, and not just want to, sometimes I sit and I literally scream and shout and cry and rail. I tend to do it in private. Although sometimes, like at the count, it comes out. But that alone, like just doing that, is helping the aggressors who seek to divide us. It's, even if it's righteous, even if it's massively left-wing howling for peace, you are playing often into the hands of the people you seek to bring down. It's about directing it into something good and something that you could be proud of. And that, I think, is something that has been missing. And I blame politicians for pretending that everything is easy when things aren't easy. It's not easy. Nothing is easy. Nothing I've ever done or changed was really easy.
Do you think you'll be standing here at the end of this Parliament and be able to say, yeah, actually, I have done that. Yeah, I have channeled our energy into
100% I will.
Yeah?
100% I will, yeah, 100%. And I think that the Labour Party will as well. It's funny enough, and definitely with more knob gags, but
you were about to say.
it's a sort of accidental it's accidentally, this book is essentially what the Labour Party is seeking to do at the moment, is this resetting of government to be honest and in service. Totally accidental. But like I say, definitely with more knob gags in the book than you might hear from the Labour front bench.
So are we saying you're the sort of the ideological driving force behind Keir Starmer?
I'm definitely. I'm saying we accidentally agree. We accidentally agree. Yeah, I'm like his. What was the one that that Margaret Thatcher was obsessed with, the sort of social thinker? No, I'm not saying that. No. I'm not saying, like I say, it's sort of accidental Starmerism.
Yes.
But again, with more gags. But I absolutely think I will be able to do that. And do you know what? I am absolutely committed to saying unpalatable things that people might not want to hear, and saying the reason why I might have to say them. And also, when things are going to take a long time and are difficult, I mean, loads of the book, funnily enough, is about how you change violence against women and girls policy and how long that's going to take and why it's so complicated. And that is my job now. And it won't happen overnight. I think that for quite a lot of women in the country, quite a lot of victims and quite a lot of the sector see my elevation to having this job in government as it's like a sort of like a light being switched on, but the light won't be switched on until I've actually done anything. It just giving me the job and it shows, I'd say, insight from Keir Starmer, but it's going to take time, and I will only disappoint. That's the truth. That's the honest thing, is that so it will be disappointing at times.
It will have to be another conversation about the drivers and how we bring what you want to bring down. But I want to. We'll finish here. Yeah. You say you're going to be a disappointment.
No. Along the way, it will feel like disappointingly slow because things are complicated.
What is the metric against which, you will measure yourself, against which we can say either Jess has been a disappointment or she hasn't been? There is an actual metric that is being used. So
halving the incidences of violence against women and girls within a decade. Obviously, that's not by the end of this Parliament. However, if we have not set in train the both cultural and systematic levers that need to be pulled to actually do this. So I'm not just going to go and announce if we give this amount of money to this will put, because all we've been doing for decades on this subject is buying bigger plasters to put over the cuts rather than actually trying to deal with the actual problem and change the systems, whether it's in the health service, whether it's in welfare, whether it's in education, and just going, we should lock these people up and be kind to these people. That alone will do absolutely nothing to bring it down. So the actual metric of halving the incidences is the actual test. But within 5 years, if the groundwork hasn't been built to make long-term, unchangeable, fundamental shift in how we deal with this systematically, then I will have failed. 100% I will have failed. Or I will have failed to have been stroppy enough to get the people who had actually failed to do it. But I don't...
Much chance of that happening?
No, absolutely no chance of me not being able to be stroppy enough. That's the fundamental thing that has to change. And I will be judged against it. And I will say if I failed, and believe you me, or her.
I bet it will. Jess Phillips, Let's Be Honest, Truth, Lies and Politics is the book. It's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio.
It's been a pleasure of mine. Headline, Jess Phillips says she'll be a disappointment.
It's not our bag.
Also, I don't think I will.
No, I don't think you will
I actually don't think I will.
I don't think you will be either.
I think
That was great.